It's when he swung it easy at three-quarter golf swings, and he pretty much hit his number all the time. Dude, but when he hit something full, he hit it 20 yards over the greens at times. He was like, what are you doing?
He's just smiley, happy, and a freakish athlete golf robot that's going to be right there winning majors for the next 10-plus years. It's amazing.
Did you say he was smiling or smiley?
Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Philadelphia 76ers, who are the second best team in this Eastern Conference by a mile when Joel Embiid is healthy. And that's just what they are. So now, if Giannis isn't available, the Bucks would be dogs in the series.
He ain't sleeping on that air mattress anymore. He's got a regular king-size bed, a posturepedic, whatever they call it, a Sealy's, whatever they do, those things. He ready to roll. Denominating tonight.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on Sports.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. We've got a fun show planned for you today. A light schedule tonight in the National Basketball Association. We'll certainly preview those games, but also get to the very latest on news and sports betting as Pat Evans weighs in on the very latest on the potential legalization of sports betting online coming to Minnesota in the future. We will touch on that. Also, Matt Lutovsky joins us from Sporting News. In addition, we've got the NFL draft coming up tomorrow night. So, we're bringing Warren Sharp back for this edition of the show. We'll have the Sharp Report coming up in about 30 minutes from now. And, of course, our live coverage of the NFL draft tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Eastern. Make sure you keep it right here. We've got a full cast ready to go, give you analysis, and, of course, tons of sports betting options on all of the different sports books. So we'll tell you about that as we continue here on the show as well. But first, let's get to the National Basketball Association last night, and the Minnesota Timberwolves are getting closer and closer to a first-round series win against the Phoenix Suns. They win again last night, 105-93, as Minnesota covers the spread. They're now up 2-0 in the series. It was not a great night for Karl Anthony Towns or Anthony Edwards, but they scored so many points off turnovers last night. In fact, Minnesota had 31 points off turnovers, and Phoenix had just 2. Naturally, that does not sit well with one of the stars on the Phoenix Suns, Devin Booker, who took some of the blame for what happened in last night's loss.
Is that like a backsided question?
I'm just trying to ask, how did the discrepancy get that big in your mind? What led to it?
How did they score off turnovers, or how did I turn the ball over?
Both, either one.
I mean, the turnovers are turnover, and then they ran out and scored. They had numbers, and it's obviously something that, I need to be better with.
Right now for Booker, they got to be better in the next game in this series, because going down 0-3, doesn't matter if you have Kevin Durant or not, you're in big trouble going into, of course, the final game in that series. No one really wins that one down 0-3, usually a sweep. All right, so the Indiana Pacers, they showed up last night at Milwaukee. Of course, Milwaukee playing shorthanded without Giannis. They got the offense going. A final of 125-108 as Indiana covers the number and wins, of course, outright. The Pacers had 37 points on 16 of 23 from the field. An incredible night for them shooting. Unfortunately, the second half really did in the Milwaukee Bucks, and playing without Giannis, they're going to need to get better contributions, of course, from Chris Middleton and, of course, from Damian Lillard, who talked about them struggling big time in the second half of that game.
I think with 11-17 left, Pat makes it a 4-point game with the and one, and then it gets away from you guys pretty quickly. Just what do you feel like happened in those next 5 or so minutes that you're down 20 5 minutes later?
Got hot. Couldn't get anything going really offensively. They took advantage of that, pushed it. Siakam made some tough plays. Turner hit some shots. But I think for the most part, their pace after I missed shots just, killed us tonight.
Dame, just for you, obviously, you got going in the first half, and then in the second half, they turned up that pressure again. Doc talked about the shot discipline maybe not being great in the second half. What did you kind of see in that regard?
I think they just, like you said, they picked up the pressure. They started to face guard and deny a little bit harder. And I just think we weren't as organized as we needed to be, when they defended that way. And, when our offense is struggling with our spacing, our pace sometimes. You got to be focused. You got to be able to execute through that, even when you're tired, even when the team is turning up the pressure and the physicality. And we struggled with that a little bit tonight. And I think because of it, our shot quality was low. And, against a team like this who, they want to get the ball out and run, get up and get, quick shots up. They play at an extremely high pace. And I just thought, the areas that we struggled in offensively really hurt our defense and allowed them to just get out and play the way that they're comfortable and the way that they want to play. And I think it showed when they kind of just jumped out and took that lead.
Series now moves back to Indianapolis, and certainly we'll see if Giannis can return at any point in this series. It certainly would help them. Boy, Kyrie Irving really confident, even though the Dallas Mavericks lost game 1 of their best of 7 against the Los Angeles Clippers, and maybe for good reason. Last night, Dallas wins at L.A., even with Kawhi Leonard coming back, the final 96-93. So the Mavericks, as a slight dog, end up picking up the win. This goes under the total of 217 points. Luka Doncic played well. But really the bottom line for Dallas is that even though a lot of these players were hurt and didn't play with each other during the regular season, getting healthy late, playing together, and being more physical is the reason why Kyrie Irving said they came out on top.
Kyrie, you guys talked about being more physical this game. Clearly you were. I wondered, as you look at this game and the way the playoffs are playing out with lower scores, more physical plays, do you feel like you guys are more equipped to play that style of basketball than maybe you were early in the year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're prepared for this time of year. We've been practicing pretty hard against each other, consistently throughout the year. We obviously had some injuries, and we weren't able to kind of grow as a group as much as we would have liked. But I think towards the end of the season, we really took practice serious, and we knew what we were getting ready for in the playoffs, matchups potentially, and I think we have to use that to our advantage to a certain degree. We have our depth, but at the end of the day, we're going to need our best players out there to be able to consistently make the right decisions. And tonight was one of those nights for us where we figured it out throughout the 4 quarters. And, once that third quarter and fourth quarter hit, I feel like our physicality warmed down a little bit. And, we could just take some of those positive notes into next game. And I think it comes from the regular season preparation and also being well-conditioned and pushing ourselves and knowing what we have left in the tank. So
should be a competitive series between these two teams down the stretch. All right, now let's get to award season in the NBA as we continue on. The most improved player in the NBA, not a huge surprise, came up big with Joel Embiid out. It's Tyrese Maxey. He wins the award, averaging 25.9 points per game, 3.7 rebounds, over 6 assists, a steal, and had 51 first-place votes, 18 second-place votes. Congrats to Tyrese Maxey, capitalizing on a great season when they needed him the most. He came through. Now, all is not well for the Jokic family, even though the Denver Nuggets are off to a commanding lead against the Los Angeles Lakers in their best of 7 series. Nikola Jokic's brother allegedly involved in an incident at the arena where he was seen punching a fan after Denver's buzzer-beating 101-99 victory over the Lakers in the playoffs. It's a video that has gone viral on TMZ. The man is seen climbing over seats to confront another person and then punches him in the face. As of right now, the police department is looking into the issue, and at no time, right now, they have not found the victim of the incident. Meanwhile, Brighter pastures for Caitlin Clark. She signs a new 8-year, $28 million contract with Nike. Congrats to her, the richest sponsorship contract for a women's basketball player ever. Okay, this morning we got a very surprise piece of news as Reggie Bush is getting his Heisman Trophy back from winning it with USC back in 2005. You may remember many years ago, he broke college football's rules in terms of contacting and using an agent. And now, due to the landscape changing, allegedly, in college football, they decided to reinstate him and give him his Heisman Trophy back, saying, quote, enormous changes in the college football landscape. Justin Fields, according to ESPN and league sources, the Steelers will not pick up his $25 million fifth-year option, which means he could potentially be a free agent. Now, of course, the Steelers have until May the 2nd to officially make that decision. Also, the NFL has been investigating tampering allegations for the Philadelphia Eagles and the Atlanta Falcons, but according to league sources, a decision will not be made on the eve of the NFL draft. So they will keep their first-round draft picks. And also the Denver Broncos have decided to pick up their fifth-year option on cornerback Patrick Surtain. In Major League Baseball, the most disappointing team thus far in the American League has to be the Houston Astros. They lose to the Cubs yet again yesterday. They're now 10 games under 500 for the first time since 2016. Roku has emerged as a potential suitor for the Sunday morning streaming package of games instead of Peacock for Major League Baseball. Speaking of which, Cardinals Diamondbacks first game today starts at 1:15 Eastern. We'll be right back.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Quotes coming out about Embiid. Oh, he's a warrior. You'll never get him off the court. You're just telling me he's an injury. He's one slip and fall away from what's not seeing him anymore in this series.
I would have sat him because there was only 1 day between the two games. It's 2 days between games 2 and games 3, and it's 2 days between games 3 and game 4.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Time to take a look at last night's NBA Finals and also go over some previews for tonight as well. Matt Lutovsky is with us from the Sporting News. And certainly we had 3 exciting finishes last night in the NBA, Matt. Happy to go over all of them with you. Get your thoughts, of course, on tonight's limited schedule. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. I mean, this is the time of year. This is the most exciting time, so I'm always happy to talk about it.
All right. So is the series over? Minnesota has taken a 2-0 lead on the Phoenix Suns. 105-93, the final yesterday. Of course, the Timberwolves You really haven't been in this position before as one of the favorites to at least go pretty far in the West, but Phoenix is battle-tested with a lot of players that they have, Booker, Durant, etc. Can Phoenix make a series out of this?
Well, I mean, I tell you what, you ask any Timberwolves fan, is the series over? They will say no, absolutely not. I think you're right about it. Phoenix has been in this situation before, and Minnesota hasn't for a long time. So this is one of those series that Minnesota's going to have to close them out. Let me put it that way. They're really going to have to slam the door. And Phoenix I do think they're going to battle, but I tell you what, you watch last night's game, it didn't look like they were. They were pretty defeated, and they got bad games from Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards, and they still lost. Now, it was in Minnesota. I think the whistle was going Minnesota's way, but I don't know how much of that's going to change. It should even out a little bit in Phoenix, but they're letting them play in the playoffs, which they were doing a lot the second half of the season. And Minnesota's the more physical team. They play better defense. That's been the case all year. And I think that's going to continue no matter where the game is. So I think Phoenix, they looked so great during the regular season against Minnesota, blowing them out 3 times. Almost everyone was on the Phoenix bandwagon. And if you just threw out everything else, you just threw out the names, threw out the teams, objectively watch the first 2 games, you'd say Minnesota's the dominant team. And they're going to close this game out in 4 or 5. Can they do it? Well, that remains to be seen, but they definitely look like they're going to take care of business, whether it's in 6, 7, however many games it takes. They look like the much better team through 2 games. So they're going to have to do it. They're going to have to prove it, but they certainly look like they're well on their way.
Yep. Ways to go is a good point, Matt. Still 4 games, 5 games to go potentially. Okay, so the Indiana Pacers got right yesterday. They looked like the team that they've looked like during the regular season. Game 1, they did not. Last night, they did, and the final was 125-108. Milwaukee just, simply put, I don't know what they're supposed to do. I mean, Giannis is not playing, so they're just trying to piece this together until he comes back. Is there a sense, Matt, that he may come back for this series? Because that certainly could change things a little bit, although I'm not even sure Milwaukee can beat Indiana with him in Indiana.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I think the fact that he really wasn't even talked about in the pregame or postgame yesterday tells you that if he's coming back, it's not going to be till the very latter couple games of this series. So Milwaukee's going to have to find a way to get it done without him again, and this time on the road, which is certainly going to be difficult. It just doesn't seem like they have anyone who can really guard Pascal Siakam. And obviously, if Giannis was there, that would change in a hurry. But without your best player, without one of the probably 3 best players in the entire league, you don't have an answer. You just don't. And Indiana isn't the same team that was beating Milwaukee consistently in the regular season. Tyrese Halliburton, just for whatever reason, probably injury related, isn't the same player he was. But now they have Siakam, who they didn't have either. And he's certainly been one of the best players in this entire playoffs. And once they sort of figured out in the second half of game 1, we're going to start playing defense, 94 feet. Indiana is not known for its defense at all. People think it's one of the worst defensive teams in this entire playoffs, which I think statistically it is. But if they just kind of speed up the game, wear down Milwaukee a little bit more, that's going to lead to, I think, more missed shots, more live ball turnovers, and then they get out to do what they do best. And you just sort of change the entire complexion of the game, the intensity. And when they get at home with their crowd, I think it's going to be tough. But Milwaukee's got veterans. They've obviously been there before. And I think this is going to be a long series one way or another. I think it's going to be a real interesting series. There's going to be some ugly games. There's going to be some fun games. But either way, this one is, looking a little bit like Indiana certainly has the edge if Giannis doesn't come back.
Yeah, no, it feels that way, especially after watching last night's game. Now, I think the opposite of the 2 series we just talked about is the next series that we're going to talk about here, which is basically, Matt, my take on Mavericks Clippers is just wake me up when it's game 7, because I think like it has been in the past. I think this thing's going 6, 7, whatever. These 2 teams know each other so well. The games are close. Dallas wins yesterday. I could see either team winning game 3. And I think we're in for a fun, long series here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this one was always destined to go at least 6, if not 7. I think the thing here is Kawhi clearly isn't 100% yet, and you wouldn't expect him to be. And that's going to be key. I think they're going to need Kawhi to look better than he looked last night to compete with Dallas consistently and ultimately win this series. So again, now we're shifting. We're going to Dallas. They're going to have the crowd. Luka likes to play with that. So I think we're going to see Dallas come out, guns blazing in Game 3, kind of like they did last night. They understood the importance of last night's game, and they responded, in kind.
All right, so now we have 2 games tonight. The NBA is not thrilled to have 2 big point spreads like this, but naturally you get it. Boston mauled the Miami Heat in Game 1. They're 14.5-point favorites again tonight, total 203. And then let's move ahead to Game 2 here. You can tell me which one you think could be more competitive. We got New Orleans on the road going up against Oklahoma City. The Thunder, 7.5 points against the Pelicans. I know the Pelicans played competitive last time out. Does this have a chance to be the better of the 2 games? It's hard for me to see, Matt, the Heat get blown out, though, 2 games in a row. I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think definitely New Orleans and OKC is going to be the more competitive game. That point spread in that Boston game is a big point spread, so I would kind of shy away from that. But I think you can maybe look at the over under there and certainly take that over as the better bet. As far as the other game, I think it'll be competitive. I think it'll be fun. I do like OKC at home. I think they kind of got some opening game jitters out of their way, and New Orleans didn't shoot well, but OKC has one of the best defenses in the league, so that doesn't surprise me they didn't shoot well. I think they can keep that going, and that'll be a really fun game to watch today.
All right, Matt, great to see you. Great to have you on the show again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a timeout. The SportsGrid Sound Off coming up next.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Quotes coming out about Embiid. Oh, he's a warrior. You'll never get him off the court. You're just telling me he's an injury. He's one slip and fall away from not seeing him anymore in this series.
I would have sat him because there was only 1 day between the 2 games. It's 2 days between games 2 and games 3, and it's 2 days between games 3 and game 4.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
It's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. It's time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off, and let's begin last night with the Dallas Mavericks and Los Angeles Clippers. And wouldn't you know, the cream rises to the top, so to speak. Luka Doncic with a huge game last night and a clutch three-pointer, hitting the shot over James Harden with less than 2 minutes in the game as Luka and the Dallas Mavericks even up the series against LA, tied at 1 apiece. And Luka talked about just how big that shot was in the victory.
in the fourth quarter, and we all just stayed together. You know, me and Kai was talking on the bench, and we just keep the guys together, and that's what we have to do.
Your left right here.
Luka, what did you like about the matchup you had there when Harden was guarding you at the top of the key and you made your step back three?
I mean, it was a big moment. I think it was a big three. We're just trying to get to my spot and then knock down the three.
Bottom line for the Dallas Mavericks is they're going to need big contributions and big points like they did yesterday from both Luka and, of course, from Kyrie Irving. In case you missed the early line this morning, Davis Maddock, along with Donnie Rightside, talked about the minutes that both of those two played and how it affected the outcome of the game.
36 minutes for Luka Doncic in this one. You can see they were not playing around. They knew we can't go in the 0-2 hole here. Luka Doncic was +8 in those minutes. Interesting that Kyrie Irving played 42 minutes and was exactly 0 ±, you know, just like kind of holding serve for those minutes. And then the extra 4 Luka Doncic minutes, that's how you end up winning the game. They also got a really good impact from Derek Lively off the bench. And Kleba, who I maligned on Monday after game one, was very solid in this one. You know, I mean, Maxi Kleba is never going to be the guy that swings this series, but Jason Kidd did opt to go for Derek Lively and Kleba with PJ Washington as opposed to playing Daniel Gafford. Gafford only played 9 minutes in this one. He's also struggling with an ankle injury that he suffered in game one, so he just might not be quite 100%.
The early line talking about that game in particular. And as Davis said, I mean, the bottom line is that Dallas has these two mega stars with mega contracts with Luka and both Kyrie Irving. So you would expect no matter what happens on the side of the Clippers, Kawhi plays or not, plays well or not, Paul George, regardless, I mean, those two players have to come up big for Dallas, probably more than any two stars in the NBA in order for them to make a deep run. The early line every morning right here on SportsGrid. Now, tonight in the NHL, we have 3 games, including a Game 3 between Boston and Toronto, with the series tied at 1, and a series that's kind of close to call at this point. Very competitive games there. We've got the Dallas Stars taking on the Vegas Golden Knights, and then the Kings are on the road taking on Connor McDavid and the Oilers. Our resident hockey expert, George Kurtz, has a preview of the trio of games.
Good morning, Craig. We have 3 playoff games in the NHL tonight. First one, Boston Bruins go to Toronto to play Game 3 of their series. It's tied at 1. We do expect Jeremy Swayman to be back in net for the Boston Bruins in this game. He has not lost to the Toronto Maple Leafs this season. We're still wondering if William Nylander will play tonight. He has not played yet in the series. We'll probably find out during the pregame skate if he will be available. Game 2 features the Vegas Golden Knights at the Dallas Stars. Vegas might have been a surprise winner of Game 1. It's not that they're a bad team. We know they're a good team, but Mark Stone had just come back from his injury, hadn't played in months here. Peter Angelo had also been out a couple of weeks due to injury. Thomas Hertl, their trade deadline acquisition, he also came back in this game. We thought there might be some rust. Not so much. They beat the favorite Dallas Stars 4-3. Our last game of the night is the Los Angeles Kings at the Edmonton Oilers. We had a high-scoring affair in Game 1, 8-4. Zach Hyman had a hat-trick. Connor McDavid with 5 assists. We might get more of the same tonight, but you're going to pay that price if you want to take the over 6.5. It's at -140 currently. We might be better off hoping that there are no goals the first 5 minutes of the game here, where that price might come down to a more reasonable -118, -114 here. Either way, we do expect the Edmonton Oilers to go up 2-0 in this series.
And the Oilers, as George mentioned, -190 on the money line tonight. So if you're interested in playing Edmonton tonight, you may want to play them with someone else at a -190. Also, as we mentioned, afternoon baseball coming your way, 1:15 Eastern, and the St. Louis Cardinals have made a pretty big move ahead of their game this afternoon, sending down one of their best players, young players from last season, Jordan Walker, according to reports, has been optioned to AAA going into the year. Was thought to be one of their young best players. He has not hit a home run. He's batting under 150 on the season, and the Cardinals are several games under 500. So that's the latest news from Major League Baseball going on today. But coming up next, we're going to dive into the latest news surrounding sports betting, and Pat Evans, who's been talking about the potential of sports betting coming live to Minnesota for years with us here on the show, has an update on that. Coming up next, this is NewsWire on SportsGrid. Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report joins us next here on the show right after this quick timeout. So stay with us on the grid. We'll be right back.
people that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Quotes coming out about Embiid. Oh, he's a warrior. You'll never get him off the court. You're just telling me he's an injury. He's one slip and fall away from not seeing him anymore in this series.
I would have sat him because there was only 1 day between the two games. It's 2 days between games 2 and games 3, and it's 2 days between games 3 and game 4.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Great to have Pat Evans back with us here on the show as we're trying to close in on the remaining states here in the country that do not have legalized sports betting. And generally speaking, that's where our updates begin, as they will here on the show today. Pat is with us. Pat, we begin with Minnesota, where a couple of years ago we thought maybe this was one of the next states to get legalized sports betting. And I know that you're following these legislative sessions. And I mean, what happened in this latest one that made folks feel so sour about the possibility of legalized sports betting coming to Minnesota this year?
Yeah, I think it was last year that I came into the year very bullish on Minnesota and told you that it was going to get done. And I think it didn't get done. And then I told you the same thing heading into this session. And, industry proponents and stakeholders all have thought this is a state that's on the verge of getting it done. I've been told multiple times from lobbyists that there's really no more work to be done for them. The politicians and every party in the state that would be part of the industry knows what, it's all about. And it's just for those parties to iron it out. Well, Minnesota has a very complex system of tribal entities and tracks that want to be included in sports betting. And anytime you get the tribal governments involved, it becomes a kind of a slippery slope, it seems. I mean, you just look at California and how ironclad they are to letting sports betting in. And you're kind of seeing something similar in Minnesota. I don't think it's all necessarily about sports betting. I think they want to maintain some kind of exclusivity just in case iGaming ever gets there, that kind of thing. So they're stuck in their mindset of we want exclusivity for sports betting. Now and that's got the support of the Democrat Farmer Labor Party, who has a great ally, a great working relationship with the tribes, and the tribes have actually influenced the DFL party enough that they've killed sports betting legislation in the past. And on the other side, you have Republicans who really want the horse racing tracks involved, and the horse racing tracks want a license. And so until you get that kind of action, and it's a very split party control situation in Minnesota, so you need support on both sides of the aisle. And because those two are so far apart and have been so far apart, you're not getting that cross-aisle agreement. This took a different kind of step earlier this week or this month when the Minnesota Horse Racing Commission said, hey, we can go ahead and allow the two tracks in the state to have historical horse racing machines. which, if you're not familiar, are basically slot machines, and that the tribes say violates their tribe exclusivity for slot machines. Well, from there, you got the DFL-led legislator saying, whoa, the Horse Racing Commission is overstepping a bound. They've put out a bill that prohibits historical horse racing machines at tracks. And this is not a retaliatory action, I've been told, but it kind of seems like it, just the way it's gone is now one of the tracks has sued a couple of the tribal entities saying they're in violation of their compacts, which say, you can only have the slot machines in blackjack, and you're offering poker and things like that. So this has taken several extra steps, and it's kind of going, just getting bogged down more into this battle between the tribes and the tracks. And because you've got the two parties, political parties on either side of it, and there's no real kind of give on either side, it just continues to get further apart. So unfortunately, it doesn't seem like Minnesota's going to get it done this year, barring a miracle. Though, we always say anything can happen in a legislative session. So, I might eat my words later, but I highly doubt it at this point. Minnesota has gone from a state that I've been very hopeful for the past 2 years to now very pessimistic on.
All right. Well, listen, let's get optimistic now and see if we can find a state to handicap as far as, somewhere where we, think about legalizing. I know Georgia's one that we've talked about going back and forth there. Missouri. Let's get to Missouri here. Of course, the Missouri-Kansas border, clearly something that both of these places want to legalize sports betting. One went ahead of the other. But I suppose if we look at sort of this ballot initiative and these signatures to get sports betting back on the ballot and going again, you would say that Missouri's in good shape.
Yeah, at this point, Missouri's in a really interesting kind of case. I mean, to your point, it seemed a couple of years ago Missouri and Kansas were racing to see who would first get it done. Kansas, of course, got it done, and here we are 2-3 years later, and Missouri is still kind of stagnant on the legislative side. That's all because of pretty much one senator, Denny Hoskins, who really wants to include video lottery terminals, which again are kind of slot machine-like machines that you put in gas stations and convenience stores on top of sports betting. And he wants to do those together. Other politicians have very little appetite for that. So what you've ended up getting is, despite a proposal passing 2 straight years and potentially a 3rd straight year this year, backed by casinos and sports teams on the House side, once that gets to the Senate, Hoskins kills it. So what we're looking at this year, it started last year actually, is the sports teams saying, hey, let's do this on our own. We can take this to the ballot. So they started a ballot petition earlier this year that, you have to have over 170,000 legitimate signatures. They set out a goal to have 300,000. They've reached that goal. Now they've upped their goal to about 320,000, and the signatures are due early next month, so we'll know relatively quickly whether or not it does end up on the November ballot. But once it is on the ballot, which it does seem like if you're going to have that many signatures over the amount that you actually need, we've seen a couple polls this spring that say 60+% of residents and voters in Missouri support sports betting, especially when it is benefiting the education, which the ballot initiative ties it to. And so, despite this legislative inaction, we're seeing this positive kind of swell on the ballot side. And, even if that doesn't pass, we've seen some things on the other side of, on the legislative side that say, a Senate proponent, Tony Lutovsky, has said, Hoskins' term's out. He's done. He's running for Secretary of State. He's not going to be a roadblock in the year. So next year, a legislative path might be in the cards. Of course, that's if the ballot proposal doesn't pass. So, Missouri is a couple options here at this point. And that's, I think, positive news, because I've seen a couple analysts come out recently saying there might not be a new state legalized until maybe 2027. And after seeing things like Georgia this year kind of fall apart like it normally has, Alabama, we'll see soon whether or not they get the lottery bill passed, but we'll see there. Mississippi, of course, has sports betting. We're still waiting on their conference committee for online sports betting. That could pass, but yeah, we're getting to the very thin potential of states passing. So a lot to watch, but not a lot of action at this time.
No, not for this year. Now, the action in the sports betting world has been a lot of discussion about banning college props on specific players. And especially with college football season coming, we're going to see which states end up doing that. As far as betting on the teams is concerned, Connecticut has not allowed that at all. Is there a chance, Pat, that they will start allowing a bigger volume of sports bets for the people who want to bet on college sports there?
Yeah, this is a really interesting kind of timing because, to your point, NCAA President Charlie Baker is pushing states and potentially a national ban on college prop bets. Well, Connecticut does not allow for in-state betting on college teams. They're looking to change that at this point and open it up to being allowed to have in-state college betting. So that's kind of interesting because just today we've got North Carolina starting up their legislative session, and we've got a representative ready to propose a bill that would ban prop betting. And that's interesting because, of course, UNC basketball star Armando Bacot has been one of the players most loudly speaking of kind of abuse from fans when he doesn't get a certain amount of rebounds or things like that. So, yeah, the college betting world is going to see a lot more action in the coming months.
All right. Well, Pat, great to catch up with you here on NewsWire. We'll talk again next week. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks as always, Craig. Talk to you soon.
All right. We got to hit the break. We got the Sharp football analysis coming up next. Warren Sharp previews the draft next.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Quotes coming out about Embiid. Oh, he's a warrior. You'll never get him off the court. You're just telling me he's an injury. He's one slip and fall away from not seeing him anymore in this series.
I would have sat him because there was only 1 day between the two games. It's 2 days between games 2 and games 3, and it's 2 days between games 3 and game 4.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Is it football season? Because I see Warren Sharp coming up here on the show in my little preview box here, as Warren's going to join us now. The Sharp Report is here. And, you know, Warren, it's always a fun time of the year, and I know the draft generally, sneaks up on us. For you, it does not, because, I mean, you've been putting out publications and posting online and everything for months since the college football season has ended. But I got to tell you, Warren, the most fascinating thing that I read this week about the draft was this column from a sportsbook operator, I believe it was Circa in Las Vegas, saying that none of the operators look forward to the NFL draft. And I wonder if that's because everything is based on an opinion and not an outcome of a game. Are there positions to take? in the NFL draft? Because I mean, certainly you're guessing how someone feels about a specific player as opposed to the outcome. How do you approach this whole thing?
Well, this is also part of the sports books, just always crying if they don't absolutely kill the public and kill everybody, then they're just going to cry and pull out their hair. So I take that with a grain of salt. But it is a challenge for them because so much of it is based upon information. And that's what they hate more than anything. When they've got the Lions playing the Packers, they can model it. They'll have better insight. They probably have better injury info than most people out there. But when it comes to the draft, and this is just information about what a team's going to do behind the scenes, and somebody might have a little bit of a better idea, and so that could get into the markets. And these sports books, they don't have as many ears out there, so the public maybe is able to get a little bit more intel, specifically the sharp bettors or the betting groups that really dig into all the different media reports, the buzzes, the intel, and then some of their own connections. So it puts the books at a slight disadvantage. But this is a funny part. If you really hate it that much, then you don't have to put out so many options. I mean, we go to all the different books and there's tons and myriads of options out there to bet. And that's why it is a very profitable time for pro bettors and for sharp bettors and for syndicate betting groups. It's a great time to be betting football is at the NFL draft because there's so many different options. It's hard for books to price these things.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. If you don't want to take the bet, you don't have to. No one ever said you did any of these sports books, so it's a fair point on your part. So we haven't talked since free agency here. The Vikings, watch Kirk Cousins take his ball to Atlanta, and so they enter the NFL draft essentially looking for at least one quarterback, maybe even two. I would assume that that's their biggest need. I know that you wrote about this over at Sharp Football Analysis. They need defense. They need everything. It seems as though they could be even, Warren, maybe headed into that R word, the rebuild word for Minnesota. I mean, so many different players and personnel headed into this season. Inevitably, what do you think happens with them?
I think that the rumor is true that they are desperate for a quarterback to replace Kirk Cousins. No offensive-minded coach, he's a play caller, wants to deal with, Sam Darnold and Nick Mullins as like your 1 and 2 options there at quarterback. So I believe that they're looking to trade up. The question is, does the board fall right to allow them to do that? And can they offer something intriguing enough? If they give up both of their first round picks because they don't have a second round pick, then, that doesn't leave them very much in this draft, aside from this pick that they would be getting a quarterback if they move up the board. And, there's a chance that a guy like Penix falls to them, but are they really in love with Penix to be the successor to Kirk Cousins? Because if you go with that guy and you're drafting him as high as they are picking, and we're talking a lot of draft capital just with that pick that's involved in drafting a quarterback. You're going to have to build around this guy for a couple of years. You can't just move off of him after one season if he doesn't end up panning out. And it's not like you're going to be able to let him sit on your bench very long when Sam Darnold is the number one guy. Like, you kind of need this guy to play at least half the season, in my opinion. So they're in a tough situation because they don't have a lot of draft capital. They have an offensive-minded quarterback coach, and they desperately want a quarterback. So we kind of know what they're looking to do, and it'll be interesting to see if the board falls in a way that they can get aggressive enough to move up and grab that quarterback that they're eyeing.
Well, the odds say it's J.J. McCarthy at plus 125 over on BetMGM, but I mean, the Giants are right there. I mean, this is not that big a spread from plus 125 to plus 275 on a pick. Then if you go down a little bit, we would assume Denver's in the market for a quarterback. And the big mystery really is what New England's going to end up doing, because there are some folks who think that New England is ready to, again, hit the rebuild button here and just wait another year for a quarterback. There are some who think that they're going to move up and take a quarterback too, or keep their pick, I guess I should say, and take a quarterback as well. Let's talk about McCarthy, who right before the championship game, Warren, most people thought second round, third round pick in the NFL. Now all of a sudden could be a top 3, top 4 picks. It's sort of insane, the helium on this guy.
Yeah, there's a ton of buzz on McCarthy. I'm hearing top 3 potentially at that third position. But look, we see this every year. Every year, quarterbacks end up getting moved up the board based upon mock drafts, and they don't end up panning out. Another team that's quarterback needy would be like the Raiders. Could the Raiders make a move? Could they trade up the board? And I just think that Whereas I would maybe advocate for the Vikings to do that. I don't think Antonio Pierce and the Raiders should allocate enough draft capital to move up and try to go get a guy, even if he does end up falling out of the top three, like JJ McCarthy. I just think that the Raiders have too many other needs themselves. And this is Antonio Pierce. He wants to run the football. This team needs to go, in my opinion, offensive line. They need to go after a lineman to try to help bulk that up. It'll help the run game a ton, which suffered a little bit last year and lost their RB1 this offseason. And it'll help whatever quarterback they have as well. And it's not a great, list of quarterbacks that are on their roster led by Gardner Minshew. But I just don't know that if you go after JJ McCarthy and then you don't have a great offensive line to protect him, how impactful he'll be in Las Vegas himself. So I think that the Raiders need to be looking to build offensive line. And I think JJ McCarthy, I'm just going to keep my ear to the ground and listen out for any other rumors of connected guys to see if he should be mocked at number 3 or if indeed he does fall down. Because once you get out of that, top 3 players, 3 teams selecting at the top 3, there's nobody that really needs a quarterback after that until you get to pick 11.
Yeah. By the way, we saw the flip with Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, 1, 2, 3 on MGM. That was the minus money. Now it's the plus money. Do you think that either take there, 1 or 2, is correct, or do you think McCarthy is a top 3 pick?
I don't know if either take is correct. I think Williams and Daniels are the 2 that I'm most confident in, and after that, to be determined.
Thanks for coming on, Warren.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Quotes coming out about Embiid. Oh, he's a warrior. You'll never get him off the court. You're just telling me he's an injury. He's one slip and fall away from not seeing him anymore in this series.
I would have sat him because there was only 1 day between the 2 games. It's 2 days between games 2 and games 3, and it's 2 days between games 3 and game 4.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. As we wrap up the show, these Taylor Swift concert tickets are still out of control wherever she is in concert here in the States or even outside of the States. And you may remember just so much discussion about Taylor Swift, watching her at the Super Bowl and all of these other Kansas City Chiefs games. Well, now Taylor Swift is taking on pickleball in a big way. And in fact, her pickleball paddle, folks, this is the next hot topic, the talking discussion right now on social media, as she's got a new Kansas City Chiefs pickleball paddle, and I guess they're playing together. And she's been wearing, of course, KC stuff, but now she has a custom Chiefs pickleball paddle that I'm assuming that we don't get to see, but she could afford to have her own pickleball universe if she wanted to. I'm assuming she has probably a court somewhere in her house or backyard. Her and Travis Kelce probably playing against each other, but they have been seen in public doing this too. And now she is a pickleball enthusiast, is Taylor Swift. So look, these stories just never cease to amaze. And by the way, for those of you who have never played pickleball before, it is actually a lot of fun. It'll get you out there. It's not quite as the endurance testing, I would say, as tennis is. It's more like table tennis with a little bit of activity, a little bit of running. So highly recommended from me as well for those of you who are thinking about picking that up. Okay, a year ago at this time, all the discussion on the pitch in soccer was based around Lionel Messi joining Miami FC. And wouldn't you know, right now, Messi's under some sort of criticism, if you can believe this, from very popular former World Cup participant and soccer broadcaster Alexi Lalas. They won the most recent game, and he scored twice in a 3-1 win over Nashville. You don't hear as much discussion in the MLS about Messi, but still, every game he goes to, a lot of people attend. But Lalas is saying, essentially at this point, that every goal that Messi scores is a little bit overrated. How about that? So we've gone from lauding this guy and saying it's amazing that he's in the MLS to now all of a sudden it's like, a little bit boring. And wouldn't you know that he's racked up 9 goals, 5 assists, and 724 minutes of action. And by the way, the 724 minutes of action is not a lot of action because Messi doesn't play in some of these games that they play at home in South Florida and even on the road. And of course, that's disappointing to some folks when they show up. This team shows up on the road and he's not even playing. But we thought that there could be nothing negative ever said about Messi. And I don't even think that this is negative, so to speak, but it just goes to show you we're in a very interesting society where things become boring quickly, probably fair to say. And instead of us doing 2 months here, like on SportsGrid, we did Messi stories every single day for about 2 months about where he's playing, where he's going, how many goals he's scoring. And now you have broadcasters say, some of his goals are much ado about nothing. How about that? So that's the latest on Messi as well. All right, in Major League Baseball, we have one of the hottest pitchers in baseball going. He threw again last night, and it's kind of flying under the radar. So we thought we would bring it to your attention. This was somebody that I thought had a chance 2 years ago to win the Cy Young. Maybe he's got a chance this year. He's going to be one of the odds-on favorites if this continues. Last night, Logan Webb threw 8 shutout innings for the San Francisco Giants. And the reason why I bring this up, not only is his ERA 2.3, but he also has a scoreless streak going, which is very rare in sports, especially in this day and age of Major League Baseball, where pitchers only pitch 5 or 6 innings. Well, last night he threw 8 shutout innings. His scoreless streak is up to 19 shutout innings, and the San Francisco Giants don't look now, all of a sudden, may be somewhat of a factor in the National League West. Now, Webb is a pitcher that's been good for a long period of time. Also, a pitcher doesn't throw 100 miles an hour, 99 miles an hour. He's got some incredible stuff, too. And we'll just keep an eye on this in the future. Now, his next start, of course, since he pitched on Tuesday, will come on Sunday, and we'll see if he can continue that scoreless streak going, and indeed will follow it, because that just doesn't happen that often anymore in baseball. Pitchers just come out of the game after 4 or 5 innings, but indeed, Logan Webb will end with highlighting him. Not to mention our first game of the day, coming up 1:15 Eastern, the St. Louis Cardinals in action. As I mentioned, the big story in baseball today is them optioning one of their top players, Jordan Walker, to the minor leagues. He was a player very highly thought of going into the season, but the Cardinals are not playing well. He hasn't hit a home run. He's batting $150 on the season. So that is the very latest going on in our little world here on NewsWire. And that will also do it for the show. Thanks to Matt Lutovsky from Sporting News for coming on the show. Great to see Warren Sharp and have him on our program as well. We'll see him on draft night tomorrow. And Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report, our associate producer, Frank, and our producer, Michael Cohen. I'm Craig Mish. We have the early line coming up, followed by Pharrell Coast to Coast at 3 o'clock Eastern. And then our draft day extravaganza begins tomorrow on the early line, and all throughout the day into the evening. We'll have plenty of coverage here for you on NewsWire as well, as it is officially here. So enjoy the rest of your day and night with some NBA and NHL action. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning for our next edition of NewsWire right here at 11 a.m. Eastern, exclusively on SportsGrid. Have a great day, everyone.